The weight of my world balanced precariously in plastic bags, cutting into my fingers as I shuffled toward the exit of Marino's grocery. Rain pattered against the storefront windows, turning the early evening sky into a watercolor of grays and blues. 6 months since Ryan's birth, 6 months since his father disappeared with our savings, leaving nothing but a hastily written note and mounting bills. "Come on, baby boy," I whispered to Ryan, who blinked sleepily against my chest in his carrier. "Just a little farther and we'll be home." I'd calculated everything to the penny today. Baby formula, diapers, the cheapest pasta I could find, and one splurge. A chocolate bar I planned to savor over the next week, breaking off tiny pieces each night after Ryan fell asleep. My paycheck from the diner wouldn't arrive for another 3 days. Until then, we'd make do with what I had. The automatic doors parted with a mechanical sigh, releasing me into the damp evening. That's when it happened. My worn sneaker caught on the uneven pavement, sending me lurching forward. I instinctively clutched Ryan tighter to my chest as the grocery bag slipped from my fingers. The sickening sound of glass shattering pierced the air. The pasta sauce I'd debated buying for 10 minutes before deciding we needed something other than butter on our pasta. "No, no, no," I gasped, watching helplessly as apples rolled across the wet pavement, milk pooled around my feet, and diapers scattered like fallen soldiers. Tears welled in my eyes as Ryan began to wail, startled by my sudden movement and the noise. That's when I noticed the car, a sleek black Bentley idling by the curb, its engine purring like a predator. Through the rain, I could make out the silhouette of a man standing beside it watching me. Something about his stillness, the way he observed without moving, sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the rain soaking through my thin jacket. "It's okay," I murmured to Ryan, rocking him gently as I knelt to salvage what I could. "We're okay." But we weren't. That pasta sauce represented 2 days of meals. The diapers were now soaking up puddle water. "Leave it." The voice slid through the air like smoke, deep and commanding. I froze, my fingers inches from a bruised apple. Slowly, I looked up. He stood over me, sheltered by a large black umbrella held by another man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running along his jawline. But it was not this guard that captured my attention. It was the man before me, rain beaded on his immaculate charcoal suit, each droplet catching light from the store's fluorescent signs. His face seemed carved from stone. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with precisely maintained stubble, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow in the dim evening light. Young, perhaps early 30s, but with an air of authority that made him seem ageless. I said, "Leave it." He extended a hand toward me, not to help me up, but as a command to stay where I was. I found myself obeying without question as he turned to the guard. "Vito, take care of this." The man called Vito moved with surprising efficiency, snapping his fingers at 2 other men I hadn't noticed before, who emerged from the Bentley. They began collecting my scattered groceries, as the stranger knelt before me, his umbrella now sheltering both of us from the rain. "Are you hurt?" His voice was softer now, but no less commanding. "No," I stammered, clutching Ryan closer. "We're fine." "You don't have to. The child." His eyes, cold as winter, flicked to Ryan, whose cries had subsided to whimpers. "He's okay. Just startled." I tried to stand, but found myself pinned by his gaze. "Your name?" It wasn't a question. It was a demand. "Lily," I whispered. "Lily Winters." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps, but that was impossible. A man like him would never know someone like me. "And the child?" "Ryan. My son." I added the last part defensively, though I wasn't sure why. He nodded once, then straightened to his full height. "Vito, make sure Ms. Winters gets fresh groceries. Everything she needs." "Wait," I protested, struggling to my feet. "I can't accept—" "You can and you will." His tone left no room for argument. "Vito will help you select what you need, and Sergio will drive you home afterward." "But I don't even know who you are," I said, finding a sliver of courage from somewhere. His lips curved into something too controlled to be a smile, but too warm to be a smirk. "Dante Ricci." He said it like I should recognize the name. And some part of me did. whispers at the diner where I worked, conversations that stopped when I approached tables of certain well-dressed men. "Thank you, Mr. Ricci, but I can't." "Can't what?" His voice hardened. "Can't feed your child properly? Can't accept help when you clearly need it?" His eyes narrowed. "Or is there someone at home who would disapprove? The father, perhaps?" The question sliced through me. "There's no one," I admitted, hating how pathetic I sounded. Ryan's father left before he was born. Something darkened in Dante's expression, a shadow passing over already dangerous waters. "I see." He checked his watch. Platinum, I guessed, catching the light as he moved. "Vito will take care of everything. I have matters to attend to." Before I could protest again, he turned and walked back to the Bentley, moving with the fluid grace of a man accustomed to being obeyed. The driver opened the door, and just before he slipped inside, Dante looked back at me. "Until we meet again, Lily Winters." It wasn't a question of if, but when. The certainty in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something else, a dangerous spark of curiosity, of wonder. Who was this man who commanded such respect, who stopped to help a struggling mother in the rain? True to Dante's word, Vito escorted me back into the store. The manager, who had barely looked at me during my careful budget shopping earlier, now practically tripped over himself to assist us. "Anything Ms. Winters wants," Vito instructed, his voice gravelly and accented. "Mr. Ricci's orders." I found myself in a daze, pushing a cart through aisles I had avoided earlier. Vito watched silently as I hesitated over organic baby food. "Take it," he said, "and more. The good formula, too. I can't possibly repay. Mr. Ricci doesn't expect repayment." Something in Vito's tone suggested this was unusual, that Dante Ricci was not a man who gave without expecting something in return. By the time we finished, my cart contained more food than I had bought in the past month. Fresh vegetables, quality meats, snacks I hadn't allowed myself since becoming a mother, and enough baby supplies to last weeks. I felt simultaneous waves of gratitude and shame. Sergio, the driver, loaded the groceries into the Bentley's trunk, while Vito helped secure Ryan's carrier in the back seat. I sat beside my son, feeling utterly out of place in the luxury vehicle, surrounded by leather that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Address?" Sergio asked, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. I hesitated before giving him my apartment building's location in the east side of the city, the kind of place where rent was cheap for a reason. Neither man reacted, but I saw Sergio and Vito exchange a glance. We drove in silence for several minutes before Vito spoke. "You work at Stella's Diner on Jefferson." It wasn't a question. A chill ran down my spine. "How did you know that?" Vito didn't answer. Instead, he said, "Mr. Ricci owns many businesses in this city. He notices things." The implication that Dante Ricci had noticed me before tonight seemed impossible. I was nobody. A single mother working double shifts, invisible to most of the world, especially to men like him. When we reached my apartment building, Sergio parked in a no-parking zone without concern. Both men insisted on carrying the groceries up 4 flights of stairs to my apartment. I fumbled with my keys, acutely aware of the peeling paint on my door, the flickering hallway light, and the distant sounds of arguments and blaring televisions from neighboring units. My tiny one-bedroom apartment felt even smaller with Vito and Sergio inside. They placed the bags on my kitchen counter and floor while I set Ryan's carrier down. "Mr. Ricci would like to ensure you have everything you need," Vito said, looking around my apartment with an unreadable expression. "Is there anything else?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications I couldn't fully understand. "No," I said firmly. "This is already too much." Vito nodded, then reached into his jacket and produced a business card. Simple black with elegant silver text. Just a phone number, no name. "If you need anything at all, call this number." Mr. Ricci's direct line. I took the card reflexively, my fingers trembling slightly. Why is he doing this? He doesn't know me. "Mr. Ricci has his reasons," Vito said cryptically. "He doesn't do anything without purpose." After they left, I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by more food than I had seen in months, clutching the business card like a talisman. Ryan began to fuss, pulling me from my daze. I prepared his bottle with the premium formula Vito had insisted on buying, changing his diaper with the brand I usually couldn't afford. As Ryan drifted to sleep in my arms, I found myself drawn to the window, 4 stories down, the Bentley still idled at the curb. It remained there for hours, a silent sentinel in the night, until I finally collapsed into bed, dreams filled with blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. The next morning, I woke to Ryan's hungry cries and the lingering feeling that last night had been a dream. But the groceries remained, as did the black business card now sitting on my nightstand. I dressed for my morning shift at the diner, bundling Ryan up for the walk to my neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, who watched him during my shifts for a reduced rate. As I stepped outside my building, I froze. The Bentley was gone, but another black car, a Mercedes this time, sat in its place. The driver's window lowered as I approached, revealing a different man than either Vito or Sergio. "Ms. Winters," he said with a nod. "I've been instructed to drive you to work." My heartbeat quickened. "By Mr. Ricci?" The driver simply nodded. I hesitated, clutching Ryan closer. "I need to drop my son with my neighbor first." "Of course." The driver didn't seem surprised. Nothing about this situation seemed to surprise these men who worked for Dante Ricci. After leaving Ryan with Mrs. Garcia, who raised her eyebrows at the luxury car waiting outside but asked no questions, I allowed myself to be driven to Stella's diner. The drive that usually took me 20 minutes by bus was completed in 7. As we pulled up to the diner, I noticed a sleek motorcycle parked nearby, its rider watching the car intently. "Another one of Mr. Ricci's men?" I asked. The driver's expression didn't change. "Mr. Ricci wants to ensure your safety, Ms. Winters." "Why?" I asked, frustration finally breaking through my shock and gratitude. "Why me?" The driver met my eyes in the rearview mirror. "That's a question only Mr. Ricci can answer." I stepped out of the Mercedes, feeling the weight of unseen eyes following me as I pushed through the diner's doors. The familiar smell of coffee and grease greeted me, along with raised eyebrows from Stella herself, who stood behind the counter refilling salt shakers. "Fancy ride, Lily," she commented, her weathered face a map of curiosity. "Secret admirer?" "Just someone being kind," I mumbled, hurrying to the back to don my pale blue uniform. As I tied my apron, my fingers brushed against the hard edge of Dante Ricci's business card, which I'd transferred to my pocket. I hadn't been able to leave it behind. The morning shift passed in a blur of coffee refills and breakfast orders. Every time the bell above the door chimed, I found myself looking up, half expecting to see Dante's imposing figure. He never appeared, but the black Mercedes remained parked across the street, its driver occasionally stepping out to smoke before returning to his vigilant position. During my break, I slipped into the kitchen where my coworker, Mia, was plating an order of pancakes. "What's with the car service?" she asked, nodding toward the window. "And don't say nothing." Half the staff is talking about it." I hesitated. "I met someone last night. He helped me when I dropped my groceries." Mia's eyes widened. "And now he's sending cars for you? Must be some rich guy." Her expression darkened. "Be careful, Lily. Men like that don't give without expecting something in return." Her words echoed Vito's implication from the night before, sending a shiver down my spine. "It's nothing," I insisted, though the weight of the business card in my pocket suggested otherwise. By the end of my shift, my feet ached and my head swam with questions. The Mercedes was still waiting when I emerged, the driver opening the door before I even reached the curb. "Mrs. Garcia's apartment," I directed, sinking into the leather seat. The same motorcycle I'd noticed earlier pulled away from its parking spot, following at a distance. The driver nodded. "Mr. Ricci also asked me to give you this." He handed back a thick envelope. My fingers trembled as I opened it, revealing a stack of crisp $100 bills. My throat tightened. There had to be thousands. Clipped to the money was a note on heavy cream stationery, written in bold, elegant script. "For the boy's needs. No discussion necessary. Dr." "I can't accept this," I said, my voice barely audible. The driver didn't respond, his eyes fixed on the road as if he hadn't heard me. The unspoken message was clear. This wasn't negotiable. When we reached my building, I tucked the envelope deep into my purse, collected Ryan from Mrs. Garcia, slipping her an extra 20 from my tip money for watching him longer than usual, and retreated to my apartment. That night, after Ryan was asleep, I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the money and the business card. Everything inside me screamed that I should return both, that nothing good could come from accepting such generosity from a stranger, especially one who moved through the world with an entourage of watchful guards. Yet another voice whispered of Ryan's future, of the opportunities this money could provide. A better apartment, proper daycare, maybe even college savings. I picked up my phone 3 times to dial the number on the card. 3 times I set it down again. On the 4th attempt, I pressed call before I could change my mind. It rang only once. Lily. His voice slid through the phone like warm honey over broken glass. Sweet, yet sharp enough to cut. My breath caught. He had known it was me, even though I'd never given him my number. Mr. Ricci. Dante, he corrected. What can I do for you, Lily Winters? The formal use of my full name sent an unexpected shiver through me. The money, I said. I can't accept it. A pause, then a soft chuckle that didn't sound amused. Yet you haven't returned it. Heat flooded my cheeks. I'm trying to. That's why I called. Are your needs met? He asked, ignoring my protest. Yours and the child's? That's not the point. It is precisely the point, he interrupted, his voice hardening. Answer the question, Lily. I swallowed, tension coiling in my stomach. Yes, more than met, but then the matter is settled. His tone softened slightly. I dislike waste, Lily. Use what I've given you for your son. Consider it an investment in his future. Why? I asked, the question that had been burning inside me all day finally escaping. Why me? Why Ryan? Silence stretched between us, punctuated only by his measured breathing. Let's discuss it in person, he finally said. Tomorrow evening? I'll send a car at 7. My pulse quickened. I can't. I have Ryan, and arrangements will be made for the child, he said, as if solving a simple logistical problem. Unless you don't trust me, the question hung in the air, loaded and dangerous. Did I trust him? This stranger who had appeared in my life like a storm, upending everything. I don't even know you, I whispered. Then tomorrow is your opportunity to remedy that. His voice had regained its smooth quality. 7 o'clock, Lily. Wear the blue dress in the back of your closet. The one you've been saving for a special occasion. My blood ran cold. How do you know about that dress? The line went dead. I sat frozen, phone clutched in my trembling hand. How could he possibly know about the dress? My one luxury, purchased before Ryan was born, before his father had cleaned out our accounts. I hadn't worn it since, saving it for a day when things might be better. Sleep eluded me that night. I checked the locks 3 times, peered through the blinds at the street below where the black car remained, its presence both threatening and strangely comforting. The next morning brought no Mercedes, but when I stepped outside with Ryan, the motorcycle was there, its rider giving me a subtle nod. The message was clear. I was still being watched. Throughout my shift at the diner, I wavered between calling the number again to cancel our meeting and curious anticipation. By the time I collected Ryan and returned home, I had decided to go through with it, if only to understand why this powerful man had taken such an interest in us. At precisely 6:30 p.m., a knock at my door startled me from my thoughts. I opened it to find Vito standing in the hallway, expression impassive. Ms. Winters? He nodded. I'm here for the child. I instinctively stepped between him and Ryan, who was playing on a blanket in the living room. What do you mean? Mr. Ricci arranged care for your son while you dined together. Vito's voice remained neutral, but his eyes softened slightly. Mrs. Elena Ricci, Mr. Ricci's mother, has offered to watch him personally. She has raised 5 children and has 3 grandchildren. The idea of sending my baby with this man to an unknown location sent panic surging through me. No, absolutely not. If Ryan can't come with me, then I'm not going. Vito's expression didn't change, but he stepped back, speaking quietly into a phone I hadn't noticed in his hand. After a brief exchange in rapid Italian, he returned his attention to me. Mr. Ricci suggests a compromise. His mother will come here to watch the child. You can meet her before you leave." Before I could respond, the distant ding of the building's elevator announced another arrival. Moments later, an elegant woman in her 60s appeared beside Vito. Her silver-streaked dark hair was swept into a perfect chignon, and she wore a simple but clearly expensive burgundy dress. Despite her refined appearance, her smile was warm as she extended her hand to me. "Lily, yes? I am Elena. Dante has told me about you and your piccolo bambino." Her accent was thicker than Dante's, her manner far more approachable. "May I come in?" Something about her kind eyes broke through my defenses. I stepped aside, allowing her into my humble apartment. She immediately spotted Ryan and her face lit up. "Ah, che bello." She knelt beside him with a grace that defied her age. Ryan, usually wary of strangers, looked up at her with curious eyes. Elena reached into her purse and produced a small wooden toy, a hand-carved car that looked both old and well-loved. "For the little one," she explained, placing it before Ryan, who immediately reached for it. "It belonged to Dante when he was small." I blinked in surprise, unable to imagine the intimidating man I'd met as a child playing with toys. Elena seemed to read my thoughts and laughed softly. "My son was a child once, difficult as that may be to believe now." She rose, studying me with the same penetrating blue eyes as Dante, though hers held warmth where his held ice. "He said you have a blue dress?" 30 minutes later, I stood before my bathroom mirror, hardly recognizing myself. The blue silk dress hugged curves I'd forgotten I had, and Elena had insisted on lending me a pair of pearl earrings and applying light makeup to my face. "Beautiful," she declared, stepping back to admire her work. "Now go. Enjoy your evening. The bambino and I will be fine." Still hesitant, I showed her where everything was. Ryan's formula, diapers, his favorite stuffed elephant. She listened patiently, though I suspected she knew more about childcare than I ever would. "Lily," she said gently, catching my hand as I fussed over Ryan one last time. "I know this is strange, but I promise you, my son is a good man. Complicated, yes. Difficult, certainly." A knowing smile touched her lips. "But good at his core. Go, talk to him. Ask your questions." A knock at the door announced Vito's return. With a final kiss to Ryan's forehead, I gathered my courage and left my son in the care of a woman I'd just met, the mother of a man who both intrigued and terrified me. The Bentley waited downstairs, but instead of Sergio, Dante himself sat in the back seat. He stepped out as I approached, his eyes traveling over me in a way that made heat rise to my cheeks. "The dress suits you," he said quietly, opening the car door. As I knew it would, I slid into the vehicle, hyper-aware of his presence as he settled beside me. He wore another impeccable suit, this one a deep navy that made his eyes appear even more intensely blue. The scent of his cologne, something woody and expensive, filled the small space between us. "Where are we going?" I asked as the car pulled away from the curb. "Somewhere private," he replied, his gaze fixed on my face, "where we can talk without interruption." The city lights blurred past the window as we left my neighborhood behind, traveling into districts I rarely visited, areas where penthouses overlooked the river and restaurants didn't display prices on their menus. "My mother likes you," he said, after several minutes of charged silence. "She's a good judge of character. She seems kind," I replied carefully. "Unlike—" I stopped myself, but his raised eyebrow prompted me to continue. "Unlike what I would expect from your mother." A smile tugged at his lips, the first genuine one I'd seen. "Because I am not kind? Are you?" I countered, finding courage from some unknown source. His eyes darkened. "When it suits me." The car turned into a private garage beneath a sleek high-rise, coming to a stop beside an elevator guarded by 2 men, who straightened immediately upon seeing Dante. They nodded respectfully as he guided me into the elevator with a light hand at the small of my back, a touch that seemed to burn through the thin silk of my dress. "My private residence," he explained as the elevator ascended swiftly. "We won't be disturbed here." The doors opened directly into a penthouse that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my yearly salary, and artwork that even I could recognize as priceless. "You live alone in all this?" I asked, unable to hide my awe. Privacy is a luxury I value, he replied, leading me toward the dining room where a table had been set for two. Crystal glasses caught the light from a modern chandelier overhead, and the delicate aroma of something delicious wafted from covered dishes. He pulled out my chair, his fingers brushing against my bare shoulders as I sat. The casual touch sent electricity racing down my spine. As he took his seat across from me, his eyes never leaving mine, I realized I was in the lion's den. And the lion was watching me with unnerving intensity. "Now, Lily Winters," he said, pouring deep red wine into my glass, "I believe you had questions for me." The wine caught the light like liquid rubies as I wrapped my fingers around the delicate stem of the glass. Why me? The question that had haunted me since our first meeting finally escaped my lips. Why go to all this trouble for a stranger who dropped her groceries? Dante's gaze was steady, unreadable as he studied me across the table. "You weren't a stranger to me, Lily." A chill ran through me despite the warmth of the penthouse. What does that mean? He lifted the covers from our plates, revealing perfectly seared scallops arranged like works of art. "Eat," he said, avoiding my question. "Then we'll talk." Something in his tone, not quite a command but certainly not a request, made me comply. The food was exquisite, flavors I couldn't even identify melting on my tongue. I ate in small, careful bites, conscious of his eyes on me, tracking every movement. "You work too hard," he said suddenly. "Double shifts at the diner, taking care of the boy alone, living in that neighborhood." I set down my fork, unease crawling up my spine. "How long have you been watching me?" A hint of a smile touched his lips. 3 months, he admitted, without a trace of embarrassment. "Since you started working at Stella's, the revelation stole my breath. 3 months of unseen observation, of someone tracking my movements, my routines. I should have been terrified, should have run from this man and his surveillance. Instead, I found myself asking, why?" Dante took a sip of his wine, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Your eyes," he said finally. "The first time I saw you, serving coffee with your son strapped to your chest, you looked exhausted, beaten down. But your eyes—" He paused, searching for the right words. There was a fire there, defiance, strength. He leaned forward slightly. "Do you know how rare that is, Lily? To see someone with nothing still fighting as if they had everything to lose?" I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond to the intensity in his voice, the way he spoke as if he'd uncovered something precious in me that I couldn't see myself. "Still doesn't explain why you'd help me," I countered, trying to maintain some semblance of rational thought. "Rich men see struggling single mothers every day. They don't usually send cars or $1,000 grocery deliveries." A shadow crossed his face. "No, they don't." He set down his glass with precision. "My father was not a good man, Lily. Powerful, yes. Respected, certainly. But not good." The abrupt change of subject disoriented me. "What does your father have to do with this?" "My mother was 17 when she met him. A waitress in his favorite restaurant." Dante's eyes had turned distant, focused on something I couldn't see. "He pursued her relentlessly. When she became pregnant with me, he married her, but kept her like a bird in a gilded cage. She had every luxury but freedom." Understanding began to dawn. "You think I'm like your mother?" His attention snapped back to me, sharp and focused. "No. You're stronger than she was." She never fought back. Before I could process his words, he stood and walked to a sideboard, returning with a manila folder that he placed between us on the table. "Open it," he instructed, refilling my wine glass. With trembling fingers, I lifted the cover. Inside were photographs and documents, bank statements, a lease agreement, medical records. My throat closed as I recognized the name on them. Jason Miller, Ryan's father. "How did you get these?" I whispered, leafing through evidence of the life Jason had built after abandoning us. A new apartment in another city, a job at a financial firm, even a dating profile where he described himself as single with no baggage. "I have resources," Dante replied simply. "When I saw you that first day at the diner, I became curious. So I looked into your situation, found the boy's father." Anger flared in my chest, not at Dante, but at Jason, smiling in these photos as if he hadn't left his pregnant girlfriend destitute. Why show me this? To hurt me? To explain, Dante corrected. The man who abandoned you and your son works for Castellano Financial Group, a company owned, through several shells, by my family. The implication hit me like a physical blow. You're his boss? Indirectly? Dante's expression hardened. A man who betrays his family, who leaves his child. He stopped, composing himself. Such a man has no honor, no integrity. He cannot be trusted in business either. A cold realization washed over me. What did you do to him? Nothing he didn't deserve, Dante said, his voice suddenly gentle. But nothing you need to concern yourself with. He won't be troubling you again, but he will be providing for his son, as he should have from the beginning. I stared at the folder, emotions warring inside me. Relief that Ryan would have support, confusion about Dante's involvement, fear of what nothing he didn't deserve might mean in the vocabulary of a man like Dante Ricci. I don't understand, I admitted. You did all this, investigated him, me, arranged child support, before you even spoke to me? Why not just introduce yourself at the diner? Dante came around the table, his movements fluid and predatory. He took the seat beside me rather than across, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Would you have accepted my help if I'd simply approached you? Or would you have seen a wealthy man offering assistance and assumed the worst about his intentions? I couldn't deny it. I would have rejected any offer from him, would have seen it as charity at best, something more sinister at worst. You didn't give me a choice, I pointed out, trying to ignore how his proximity made my pulse quicken. The groceries, the car service, this dinner, you decided all of it. Yes. No apology, no justification, just that single word, as if my observation merely confirmed what he already knew. And what happens now? I asked, setting down my wine glass to hide the trembling of my fingers. More surveillance? More uninvited interventions in my life? His hand covered mine on the table, warm and unexpectedly gentle. What happens now is your choice, Lily. For the first time since we met. The touch of his skin against mine sent sparks racing up my arm. I should have pulled away, but found myself frozen, captivated by the intensity of his gaze. What are my options? My voice emerged as barely more than a whisper. Option 1, he said, his thumb tracing small circles on my wrist that made it difficult to concentrate. You leave here tonight, return to your son, and continue your life. The child support payments will arrive monthly. The car service will remain available to you, though you need never use it. My men will ensure your neighborhood becomes safer, though you'll never see them. Your life improves, but remains your own. The offer was generous beyond imagining, financial security without obligation. Yet the thought of returning to my lonely existence after glimpsing his world left an unexpected hollowness in my chest. And option 2? I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Dante's eyes darkened. You allow me into your life. Not just as a benefactor, but as, he hesitated, searching for the right word, as someone who cares for you and your son's well-being, someone who wants to see you thrive, not merely survive. Someone who watches from afar? I challenged, finding a spark of the defiance he claimed to admire. A smile touched his lips, genuine this time, transforming his severe features into something devastatingly handsome. No. Someone present. Someone involved. The implication hung in the air between us, charged with possibilities I hardly dared consider. Why would you want that? You could have any woman. Women without the complications I bring. I don't want any woman, he said simply. I want you. The directness of his statement stole my breath. You don't even know me. I know enough. His hand tightened slightly around mine. I know you work until your feet bleed rather than accept handouts. I know you read to your son every night, even when you're exhausted. I know you save the crusts from your sandwiches at the diner because you can't bear waste. Each observation was like a key unlocking parts of myself I hadn't realized anyone had noticed. That's not knowing me, I whispered. That's watching me. Then let me know you, Lily Winters. His voice had dropped to a low, hypnotic cadence, Let me learn what makes you smile, what brings you joy, what you dream of in those quiet moments when you think no one sees. Warning bells clamored in my mind, reminding me that I sat in the home of a man who admitted to having me followed, who spoke of honor and consequences in the same breath, whose very name caused hardened men to snap to attention. Yet beneath the fear lay something else. A dangerous, exhilarating curiosity about what life might be like in Dante Ricci's orbit. "And what would I be to you?" I asked, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "A project? A possession?" Something flashed in his eyes, approval, perhaps, at my directness. "Neither. You would be," he broke off, then continued with careful precision. "You would be someone I protect, someone I provide for, someone under my care. Not an equal," I noted. "Few people are my equal, Lily," he said without arrogance, merely stating what he believed to be fact. "But you would be respected, valued." I stood abruptly, needing distance to clear my head from the intoxicating combination of his proximity, his words, and the wine warming my veins. I walked to the wall of windows, gazing out at the glittering city below. "I hardly know you," I said to my reflection in the glass. "You could be dangerous." I heard him rise, felt him approach until he stood behind me, close enough that I could feel his breath stir the hair at the nape of my neck. "I am dangerous," he admitted, his reflection meeting mine in the window, "but never to you, never to your son. Why should I believe that? Because I give you my word." He spoke as if this settled the matter completely. "And in my world, Lily, a man's word is the only true currency." I turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close we stood, of how his presence seemed to fill the space around me, making it difficult to breathe, to think. "I need time," I said finally. "This is overwhelming." "Of course." He stepped back, giving me space without seeming to retreat. "Take all the time you need." Relief washed through me, followed quickly by confusion when I caught the flash of something like disappointment in his eyes. Did he expect me to agree immediately? To fall into his arms after one dinner, one conversation? "I should get back to Ryan," I said, glancing at the delicate watch I'd borrowed from my neighbor for the occasion. "Of course," he repeated, guiding me back toward the elevator with that same light touch at the small of my back. "Vito will drive you." The descent to the garage was silent, tension crackling between us like electricity. When the doors opened, Vito stood waiting beside the Bentley, expression impassive as always. Dante walked me to the car, opening the door himself rather than allowing Vito to do it. Before I could slide inside, he caught my hand, raising it to his lips in a gesture that seemed both old-fashioned and intensely intimate. "Consider what I've said, Lily," he murmured against my skin. "You deserve more than struggling alone." The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. By the time Vito escorted me to my door, I had convinced myself that I would decline Dante's offer. It was too much, too fast, too dangerous. Then I opened my door to find Elena seated on my secondhand couch, Ryan sleeping peacefully in her arms. She looked up with a warm smile that reminded me so much of the one Dante had briefly revealed. "He's a perfect angel," she whispered, her eyes soft with affection as she gazed down at my son. "So strong, like his mama." Something twisted in my chest at the sight. This elegant woman holding my child with such genuine tenderness, as if he were precious to her already. How long had it been since anyone but me had looked at Ryan that way? Since anyone had seen him as something other than a burden, a complication. "Thank you for watching him," I managed, slipping off the borrowed earrings and placing them on the coffee table. "You didn't have to stay this late." "It was my pleasure." She rose with practiced grace, transferring Ryan to my arms without waking him. He reminds me of Dante at this age. So serious, watching everything. I couldn't help but smile at the image of Dante as a solemn baby, studying the world with those penetrating blue eyes. Elena touched my cheek gently. "My son is complicated, Lily. His world is not easy, but he sees something in you, something special, something worth protecting." She picked up her purse, preparing to leave. "Whatever you decide, remember that the Ricci family takes care of its own, always." After she left, I stood in my suddenly quiet apartment, Ryan's warm weight against my chest, Elena's words echoing in my mind. The Ricci family takes care of its own. Was that what Dante was offering? Not just assistance or even companionship, but belonging? The chance to be part of something larger than myself? I placed Ryan in his crib, changed out of the blue dress, and sat on the edge of my bed, turning Dante's business card over and over in my fingers. The simplicity of it, just a phone number, no name or title, seemed at odds with the complexity of the man himself. A man who had watched me for months. A man who had confronted my son's father without my knowledge or permission. A man who commanded respect with his mere presence. A man who looked at me as if I were something precious. I reached for my phone before I could change my mind, dialing the number I'd already memorized. It rang once. Lily. His voice, even through the phone, sent a shiver down my spine. Have you decided? I took a deep breath, the card clutched in my free hand like a talisman. Yes, I said softly. I choose option 2. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever, filled with possibilities both terrifying and exhilarating. Good, he finally replied, the single word laden with satisfaction. Very good. The week that followed passed in a whirlwind of changes. The morning after our dinner, a team of security experts arrived at my apartment building to install a state-of-the-art system in my unit. By afternoon, workers were replacing my worn furniture with pieces that somehow matched my taste exactly, comfortable yet elegant, nothing flashy or ostentatious. Mr. Ricci was very specific, explained the decorator. A petite woman with a French accent who introduced herself simply as Claudette. Comfortable for the baby, practical for you, but quality everything. I watched, overwhelmed, as my shabby apartment transformed. The ancient refrigerator was replaced with a sleek stainless steel model. The lumpy mattress where Ryan and I slept gave way to a plush queen-size bed with a beautiful wooden crib beside it. Even the bathroom received an upgrade, with heated tiles and fluffy towels that felt like clouds. Through it all, Dante himself remained absent, though his presence was felt in every careful selection, every considerate detail. A bookshelf appeared, filled with the classics I'd once mentioned loving in college. Ryan's crib came with a mobile of stars and planets. How had Dante known my son was fascinated by the night sky? Each night, precisely at 9, my phone would ring. Tell me about your day, Dante would say, his voice a warm caress in the darkness of my new bedroom. And I would, recounting small moments with Ryan, interactions at the diner, my thoughts on books I was reading from the new shelf. He listened with an intensity that made me feel seen in a way I never had before. He asked questions that showed he remembered every detail I shared, building a map of my life, my mind, my heart. On the 5th night, as our call drew to a close, I gathered my courage. When will I see you again? His chuckle sent warmth spreading through me. I've been giving you space, Lily. Time to adjust. I'm adjusted, I said, surprising myself with my boldness. I'd like to see you. Tomorrow, then, he replied, satisfaction evident in his tone. I'll come for you after your shift. There's someone I want you to meet. Curiosity burned in me. Who? My family, he said simply. Sunday dinner is a tradition. My mother has been asking when she'll see you and Ryan again. Fear and excitement tangled in my chest. Meeting his family meant stepping further into his world, a world I still understood so little about. Will I fit in? I asked, hating the vulnerability in my voice. You'll be perfect, he assured me. Just be yourself. That's who they want to meet. After we hung up, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. Dating a normal man would be complicated enough as a single mother, but Dante Ricci was far from normal, with his drivers and security teams, his penthouse and business empire. And there was still the question of exactly what that empire entailed. I wasn't naive. The way people responded to him, the power he wielded, the casual mention of family businesses. It all pointed to connections I wasn't sure I wanted to understand. The next day at work, I found myself watching the clock, anticipation and anxiety building with each passing hour. Mia caught me checking my reflection in the chrome of the coffee machine for the 3rd time. Hot date? She teased, bumping my hip with hers as she reached for a mug. "Something like that," I admitted, feeling my cheeks flush. Her smile faded slightly. "It's him, isn't it? The guy with the cars and the money. I've seen his men around, watching the diner." I nodded, unable to deny it. Mia leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Lily, I've heard things. About the Ricci family." A chill ran through me despite the heat of the kitchen. "What things?" She glanced around nervously. "They're connected, you know? Old money, old power, not all of it clean." She squeezed my arm. "Just be careful, okay? Men like that, they own things. People." Before I could respond, the bell above the door chimed. Instead of Vito or Sergio, Dante himself stood in the entrance, commanding the attention of every person in the diner without saying a word. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. No tie. The top buttons of his crisp white shirt undone just enough to hint at the strong column of his throat. My heart stuttered in my chest as his eyes found mine instantly, as if drawn by some magnetic force. The hint of a smile touched his lips. A private gesture meant only for me. "Your guy's here," Mia whispered, giving me a gentle push. "Go. But remember what I said." I untied my apron with trembling fingers, suddenly conscious of my worn uniform, the coffee stain on my sleeve, my hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Dante didn't seem to notice any of it as I approached. His gaze remained fixed on my face, intense and appreciative. "Lily," he said, my name on his lips sounding like something precious. "Ready to go?" I nodded, acutely aware of the eyes following us as we left the diner, of Stella's raised eyebrow and knowing smile, of Mia's worried frown. The Bentley waited outside, but Dante surprised me by opening the passenger door of a sleek black Ferrari parked behind it. "Just us today," he explained, helping me into the low-slung seat. "I thought you might enjoy the drive." The interior smelled of expensive leather and his cologne. As he slid into the driver's seat beside me, the space suddenly felt intimate, charged with an electricity I couldn't ignore. "I've never been in a car like this," I admitted, as the engine purred to life. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his severe features into something breathtaking. "There will be many firsts for us, Lily." The promise in his words sent a shiver down my spine. He drove with the same confident precision with which he seemed to do everything, navigating through the city traffic before hitting the coastal highway that wound along the shore. "Where are we going?" I asked, watching the scenery blur past. "My family home," he replied, one hand resting casually on the steering wheel, the other reaching across to take mine. Outside the city, the casual touch of his fingers interlaced with mine felt more intimate than any kiss. I found myself studying his profile as he drove, the strong line of his jaw, now relaxed in a way I hadn't seen before, the slight curl of his hair at the nape of his neck, the tiny scar near his temple that I hadn't noticed during our dinner. "You're staring," he observed, glancing at me with amusement. "I'm trying to figure you out," I admitted. He laughed softly. "And your conclusion so far?" I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone colder, more intimidating." His thumb traced patterns on my palm that made it difficult to concentrate. "I can be both of those things when necessary," he said quietly, "but not with you. Never with you." After about 40 minutes, we turned onto a private drive lined with ancient oak trees. At the end stood a sprawling Mediterranean-style villa, warm terracotta walls glowing in the late afternoon sun, surrounded by meticulously landscaped gardens. "This is where you grew up?" I asked, awed by the beauty and obvious wealth surrounding us. Dante nodded, helping me from the car. The Ricci family home for 3 generations. Security was visible but discreet. Men stationed at various points around the property acknowledged Dante with respectful nods as he guided me toward the house, his hand at the small of my back in what was becoming a familiar gesture. The front door opened before we reached it, revealing Elena Ricci with a warm smile that immediately put me at ease. "Lily, and where is the little one?" she asked, embracing me as if we were old friends. "Mrs. Garcia is watching him," I explained. I thought this first meeting might be easier without a baby in the mix. Next time, you bring him, she insisted, linking her arm through mine and leading me into a soaring entryway. And call me Elena, please. Mrs. Ricci makes me feel ancient. The interior of the villa was even more impressive than the exterior. Vaulted ceilings, marble floors, artwork that belonged in museums. Yet it felt lived in, comfortable in a way Dante's sleek penthouse did not. Family photos lined the hallways, fresh flowers brightened every room, and the delicious aroma of home cooking permeated the air. Elena led us to a sunlit terrace overlooking the ocean, where several people were already gathered. A distinguished older man with salt and pepper hair rose as we approached, his resemblance to Dante unmistakable, despite the decades between them. Papa, this is Lily. Elena introduced me. Lily, my husband, Antonio. Antonio Ricci took my hand between both of his, studying me with the same penetrating gaze as his son. So you're the one who has captured my son's attention, he said, his accent thicker than Dante's. Welcome to our home. One by one, I was introduced to the rest of the family, Dante's younger sister Sofia and her husband Marco, his older brother Salvatore with his wife Isabella and their twin boys, and his youngest brother Gabriel, who greeted me with a teasing smile and a whispered, "Finally, someone who might make my brother smile." Throughout the introductions, Dante remained close, his hand never far from mine, his eyes tracking my reactions. I could feel his tension, his concern about how I would respond to his family, and they to me. But my worries about fitting in quickly dissolved as Elena insisted I help her in the kitchen, where she promptly handed me a glass of wine and put me to work chopping herbs. Sofia joined us, regaling me with embarrassing stories from Dante's childhood that had me laughing until tears formed. He was always so serious, Sofia confided, casting a glance toward the terrace where Dante stood with his father and brothers, deep in conversation. Even as a boy, taking responsibility for everything and everyone. He still is, Elena agreed, stirring a pot of sauce that smelled divine. But when he speaks of you, Lily, something changes, a lightness I haven't seen in him for many years. I flushed, unsure how to respond to the implication that I had somehow affected this powerful, controlled man. We hardly know each other, I demurred. Sometimes time is irrelevant, Elena said with the certainty of someone who had lived enough to know. When it's right, it's right. Dinner was served at a long table beneath a pergola draped with fairy lights, the ocean providing a spectacular backdrop. Course after course of traditional Italian cuisine appeared, each more delicious than the last. Wine flowed freely, conversation moved seamlessly between English and Italian, and laughter echoed under the stars. I found myself seated between Dante and his father, Antonio asking thoughtful questions about my life, my interests, my hopes for Ryan's future. There was no judgment in his inquiries, only genuine curiosity, and increasingly approval. You've had a difficult path, he observed as dessert was served. Yet you've maintained your strength, your dignity. These are qualities the Ricci family admires. Beside me, Dante's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. The simple gesture conveyed volumes: pride, reassurance, possession. As the evening progressed, the family gradually dispersed. The twins fell asleep on a nearby sofa, Salvatore and Isabella excusing themselves to take them home, Gabriel departing for what Sofia teasingly called his nightlife, Marco and Sofia lingering over digestives with Antonio, while Elena insisted on sending leftovers home with us. Eventually, Dante and I found ourselves alone on a lower terrace, the sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below us, the moon casting silver light across the water. He stood behind me, arms wrapped around my waist, my back against his chest. "They love you," he murmured against my hair, "especially my mother." I leaned into his embrace, feeling safer than I had in years. "They're wonderful." Nothing like what I expected. "What did you expect?" he asked, echoing our earlier conversation in the car. I hesitated, then decided on honesty again. Something more intimidating, less warm. His quiet chuckle rumbled against my back. "We're Italian, Lily. Family is everything to us." The word hung in the air between us, loaded with implication. Family. Was that what he was offering? A place for Ryan and me in this close-knit clan of Ricci's? "Dante," I began, turning in his arms to face him. "What exactly is your business? Your family's business?" His expression remained open, but I sensed him choosing his words carefully. We have interests in many sectors: real estate, import-export, financial services, private security. Legitimate businesses? I pressed, remembering Mia's warnings, the whispers at the diner. His eyes held mine, unwavering. Would it matter if they weren't? If I told you there were aspects of my world that operated in gray areas? I swallowed hard, recognizing the crossroads before me. This was my chance to walk away, to return to my struggling but uncomplicated life, yet standing here in his arms, with the memory of his family's warmth still fresh. I couldn't bring myself to retreat. It would matter, I admitted softly, but it wouldn't change how I feel. Something shifted in his expression. A tension I hadn't realized he was carrying melted away. His hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb brushing across my lower lip in a touch so gentle it made my heart ache. My family has power in this city, he said carefully. Power built over generations, not all of it through means society would approve of. I won't lie to you about that. I nodded, appreciating his honesty even as it confirmed my suspicions. And now? The businesses you run? Legitimate, he assured me. My father began the transition years ago. I've completed it. The Ricci Empire now operates within the law, though we still maintain certain connections from the old days. The men who watch over me, the way people react when they hear your name. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Reputation has value, Lily. I don't flaunt our history, but I don't deny the advantages it provides. I thought of the security men stationed around his family home, the way the restaurant manager had scrambled to please Vito when he mentioned Dante's name, the swift removal of Jason from my life. And what happens to people who cross you? I asked, needing to know, though part of me feared the answer. His expression darkened. Justice happens, not always through courts or police, but justice nonetheless. Ryan's father is alive and well, Dante interrupted, understanding my concern, working at a much less prestigious job in another state, with court-ordered payments deducted directly from his salary. He faced consequences for his actions, but nothing permanent. Relief washed through me. Whatever else Dante might be, he wasn't the monster my imagination had conjured, or at least, not with those who hadn't truly harmed his family. What about me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What happens if I cross you? Pain flashed in his eyes. You could never cross me, Lily, and I would never harm you. Not for any reason. Not for any price. His hands framed my face with exquisite tenderness. You and Ryan are under my protection now. That means something different in my world than it might in yours. What does it mean? It means you're mine to care for. Mine to protect. Mine to... He hesitated, then continued with a fierce intensity that stole my breath. Mine to love, if you'll allow it. The word hung between us, unexpected and powerful. Love. Could this intense, dangerous man truly love someone like me, a struggling single mother he barely knew? And more importantly, could I love him back, knowing what I now knew about his world? As if reading my thoughts, he continued softly, I don't expect you to love me yet, Lily. I know this has been fast, overwhelming perhaps, but I want the chance to earn your trust, your affection, eventually your heart. The raw honesty in his voice undid me. Without stopping to think, I rose on tiptoes and pressed my lips to his. For a heartbeat, he remained still, as if shocked by my boldness. Then his arms wrapped around me, pulling me against him as he deepened the kiss with a hunger that matched my own. His lips were firm, yet gentle. His hands splayed across my back, holding me as if I might vanish if he let go. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, his eyes had darkened to midnight blue, burning with an intensity that sent heat pooling low in my belly. Lily, he whispered, my name a prayer on his lips. Be sure. Be very sure this is what you want. Because once you're truly mine, I won't let you go. The possessiveness in his words should have frightened me. Instead, it ignited something primal within me, a longing to be claimed, to belong to someone who would fight for me, protect me, treasure me. I'm sure, I whispered back, and saw something wild and beautiful break free in his expression. This time when he kissed me, All gentleness was gone, replaced by passionate need. His hands tangled in my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss further. I clutched at his shoulders, lost in the sensation of being completely enveloped by him, his scent, his taste, his strength surrounding me. A discreet cough from the doorway broke the spell. We turned to see Vito standing there, expression carefully neutral. "Sir, the car is ready whenever you and Ms. Winters wish to depart." Dante nodded, keeping one arm firmly around my waist. "We'll leave shortly, Vito. Thank you." After Vito disappeared, Dante pressed his forehead against mine, our breathing gradually slowing. "I should take you home," he said, though his tone suggested it was the last thing he wanted. "You need to get back to Ryan." The mention of my son brought reality crashing back. "Yes," I agreed reluctantly. "Mrs. Garcia can't stay too late." As we walked back through the house to say our goodbyes, Elena caught me in a warm embrace. "You'll come again," she said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. "And bring the little one next time. Sunday lunches are family tradition, family." The word resonated through me as we drove back toward the city, Dante's hand resting on mine. Was I really considering bringing Ryan into this world? Allowing him to grow up surrounded by the complicated legacy of the Ricci name? "You're thinking too hard," Dante observed, glancing at me as we approached the city limits. "Just processing," I admitted. "This is a lot to take in." He squeezed my hand gently. "One day at a time, Lily. We have all the time in the world." When we reached my apartment building, he insisted on coming upstairs with me. Mrs. Garcia, a knowing smile on her face, accepted his generous payment for the extra hours without comment, merely whispering to me, "He's handsome, your new friend, and he looks at you like you hung the moon." After she left, Dante moved through my upgraded apartment with the satisfaction of someone inspecting his work. "Better," he murmured, noting the new security panel by the door, the comfortable furniture, the stocked refrigerator. "But not good enough. Not for you and Ryan." I checked on my sleeping son, my heart melting at the sight of him clutching the wooden car Elena had given him. When I returned to the living room, I found Dante studying the few photos I had displayed, mostly of Ryan, one of my parents who had died in a car accident during my senior year of college, leaving me alone in the world. "He looks like you," Dante said softly, tracing Ryan's face in one of the pictures. "Your eyes, your determination. Everyone says he looks like his father," I replied, surprised. Dante shook his head. "No. He's yours in all the ways that matter." He turned to me, his expression suddenly serious. "I want to take care of both of you, Lily. Properly." Something in his tone set my pulse racing. "What does that mean?" He crossed to where I stood, taking both my hands in his. "Move in with me. You and Ryan. Not to the penthouse. It's not suitable for a child. I have a house in the Westwood neighborhood. Space, gardens, security, a proper home." The offer stole my breath. "Dante, we've known each other for what? A week? That's too fast." "Is it?" he challenged gently. "When something is right, why wait? You said yourself that you're sure about us. About being together, yes," I clarified. "Not about moving in immediately. What would people think?" A slight frown creased his brow. "Does that matter to you? What others think?" I thought about it honestly. Not for myself, but for Ryan. I don't want him growing up with people whispering about his mother. Understanding softened Dante's expression. "Then we'll do this properly, in stages." He brushed a strand of hair from my face. "I'll court you, Lily Winters, like a gentleman. Dinners, outings with Ryan, family Sundays. We'll let the world see that this isn't some passing fancy." Relief washed through me. "Thank you for understanding." His smile was gentle. "I want you comfortable, not pressured. But know this." His voice dropped to a husky whisper. "You and Ryan are already mine in my heart. The rest is just formality." The possessive declaration sent warmth spiraling through me. He sealed it with a kiss that started gentle, but quickly blazed into something more urgent. His hands traced the curve of my waist, pulling me against him until I could feel every hard plane of his body. When he finally pulled back, his eyes had darkened with desire. "I should go," he said, voice rough with restraint. "Before I forget my promises about doing this properly." I walked him to the door, already missing his presence, though he hadn't yet left. "When will I see you again?" "Tomorrow," he promised, pressing a final kiss to my lips. "I'll pick you up after your shift. We'll take Ryan to the park, the private one my family maintains. No photographers, no strangers, just us." After he left, I leaned against the closed door, heart racing, mind whirling with everything that had happened. In the span of a week, my world had completely transformed. From struggling single mother to... what? The girlfriend of Dante Ricci? It seemed surreal, like a fairy tale I couldn't quite believe. Yet the upgraded apartment around me was real. The taste of his kiss lingered on my lips. And for the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. The months that followed unfolded like a dream. True to his word, Dante courted me with old-fashioned dedication. Dinners at exclusive restaurants where the staff greeted him by name. Weekend outings to his family's private beach house. Sunday lunches that became a sacred tradition. Ryan increasingly doted on by the entire Ricci clan. Elena taught me to make authentic Italian dishes, her gentle guidance never making me feel less than. Sophia became the sister I'd never had, taking me shopping at boutiques I'd previously only walked past, insisting that I needed a wardrobe worthy of a Ricci woman. Throughout it all, Dante remained attentive, passionate, and unfailingly patient. When I decided to quit the diner to focus on finishing the nursing degree I'd abandoned when I became pregnant, he supported me without question, arranging for top tutors and a flexible schedule that allowed me to study while still being present for Ryan. Gradually, I gained insight into Dante's world. I learned that while his businesses were legitimate, his power extended far beyond normal corporate influence. City officials sought his approval for major projects. Police chiefs dined at his table. Even the mayor called him for advice during crises. "It's complicated," he explained one night as we sat on the terrace of his Westwood house, the home he still hoped we would share. "My grandfather built his empire through fear. My father maintained it through strategic alliances. I'm transforming it through legitimate power and influence. And the old ways?" I asked cautiously. "The connections your father mentioned?" Dante's expression remained calm. "Some traditions have value, Lily. Protection, loyalty, justice. The methods change, but the principles remain. I came to understand that the Ricci Empire operated on a code of honor that transcended conventional morality. Dante protected those under his care with fierce dedication. He rewarded loyalty generously, and those who betrayed his trust faced consequences, though I never witnessed the darker aspects of that justice firsthand. As summer turned to fall, then winter, our lives became increasingly intertwined. Ryan, now approaching his first birthday, lit up whenever Dante entered the room, reaching for him with complete trust. I watched in wonder as this powerful, dangerous man would soften completely in the presence of my son, getting down on the floor to build block towers, reading the same storybooks over and over with infinite patience. On Christmas Eve, 6 months after our first meeting at the grocery store, Dante invited my neighbor Mrs. Garcia to watch Ryan at his Westwood home while he took me for a drive. "Where are we going?" I asked as he guided the Ferrari along the coastal highway, the same route we'd taken to his family home that first Sunday. "You'll see," he replied with an enigmatic smile. Instead of turning toward the Ricci villa, he continued along a private road that wound up into the hills overlooking the ocean. At the crest sat a spectacular Mediterranean-style home, warm lights glowing from every window, the gardens tastefully decorated with subtle holiday lights. "Whose house is this?" I asked as he parked in the circular driveway. "Ours," he said simply. "If you want it to be." My heart skipped a beat as he led me through the front door into a soaring entryway, decorated with a magnificent Christmas tree. The home was fully furnished in a style that somehow perfectly blended his tastes with mine, elegant but comfortable, luxurious yet practical for a young child. Room after room revealed thoughtful details, a state-of-the-art kitchen since I'd discovered a love of cooking under Elena's tutelage, a nursery for Ryan painted with a mural of the night sky he loved, a home office where I could study, a master suite with views of the ocean that took my breath away. In the center of the master bedroom, Dante turned to me, his expression more vulnerable than I'd ever seen it. "I promised to court you properly, Lily. To give you time. To let the world see that what we have is real." He took my hands in his. 6 months have passed, 6 months of falling more deeply in love with you and Ryan every day. My heart thundered in my chest as he lowered himself to one knee, producing a velvet box from his pocket. I know what I am, he said softly. I know the complications my name brings. But I also know that I love you with everything I am. You've brought light back into my life. He opened the box to reveal a stunning emerald-cut diamond. Lily Winters, will you marry me? Will you and Ryan become Ricci's in name as well as in my heart? Tears blurred my vision as I gazed down at this powerful man kneeling before me, offering me not just a ring but a future, a family, a place to belong. Yes, I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. Yes, Dante. As he slid the ring onto my finger, then rose to capture my lips in a kiss that promised forever, I knew that my life had changed irrevocably that rainy evening at Marino's grocery. What had seemed like the worst moment, dropping my precious groceries, exposing my vulnerability to the world, had actually been the beginning of something beautiful. 6 months ago, I had been a struggling single mother, invisible to most of the world. Now, I was the future Mrs. Ricci, loved fiercely by a man who commanded respect throughout the city, embraced by a family who had welcomed me and my son without hesitation. We'll live here? I asked when we finally broke apart, my hand caressing his cheek. If you like it, he confirmed. Though the penthouse and the family villa are always available to us. I looked around at the beautiful home he had created for us, for our family. It's perfect. Later that night, after returning to the Westwood house where Ryan slept peacefully, unaware of how his world had just changed, Dante and I stood on the balcony, champagne in hand. His family would arrive in the morning for Christmas celebrations, eager to hear our news, though Elena had surely guessed it already. Any regrets? He asked, his arm around my waist, my head resting on his shoulder. I thought about the path that had led me here, the struggles, the fears, the moment of desperation in the rain that had brought this extraordinary man into my life. Not one, I said, tilting my face up to his. Every step brought me to you, his smile, the real one, warm and open, that he showed only to me and Ryan, lit up his face. And to think it all began with spilled groceries. As he lowered his lips to mine, sealing our future with a kiss that held both tenderness and passion, I silently thanked the universe for that rainy evening, for my worn sneaker catching on uneven pavement, for the chance encounter that had changed everything. In Dante's arms, I had found not just security, but a love powerful enough to transform both our lives, and as his future wife, as part of the Ricci family, I would never again stand alone. The faint clink of silverware against porcelain echoed through the restaurant like tiny bells, each sound amplifying my solitude. I shifted in the plush velvet chair, feeling both out of place and invisible in this temple of luxury. The weight of exhaustion hung on my shoulders. A constant companion since becoming both mother and father to my 4-year-old daughter, Lily. More water, ma'am? The server's voice startled me from my thoughts, his crisp black uniform a stark contrast to my simple dress bought on clearance 3 seasons ago. Yes, thank you. My voice came out smaller than intended, as if the opulence of the place had stolen my volume along with my confidence. I shouldn't have been there. The obsidian was far beyond my budget, a cathedral of crystal chandeliers and marble floors where the wealthy came to worship at the altar of exclusivity. But today was my 30th birthday, and after dropping Lily at my neighbor's for a rare overnight stay, I'd made a reckless decision to treat myself to one decent meal. Just one night where I wasn't eating dinosaur-shaped nuggets or mac and cheese from a box. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation, and the occasional burst of practiced laughter. I kept my eyes fixed on the menu, each price making my stomach twist. I'd saved for months for this indulgence, tucking away spare dollars from my paychecks at the hospital where I worked as a nurse's assistant. The salmon is excellent tonight, the server suggested. Noticing my hesitation, I nodded gratefully, closing the leather-bound menu. The salmon, then. As I waited, I allowed myself to absorb the atmosphere. The heavy scent of expensive perfumes, mingling with aromas from the kitchen, the soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, the warmth from candles casting everyone in a flattering glow. For a moment, I could pretend I belonged. The stillness shifted suddenly. Like animals sensing a predator, the other diners subtly straightened, conversations falling to whispers. The air itself seemed to change, charged with an electric current of deference and fear. I didn't immediately notice him. Instead, I felt him first, a presence that altered the gravity of the room. My eyes lifted just as he moved past my table, a tall figure in a perfectly tailored suit that made the expensive clothes of other patrons look like department store bargains. Dark hair, cut precisely, framed features that seemed sculpted rather than grown, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes the color of aged whiskey. He was flanked by two men whose stiff postures and scanning gazes marked them as security rather than companions. One whispered something in his ear, causing those intense eyes to flick directly to my table. I looked away instantly, heart hammering against my ribs. Something primal warned me not to be caught staring at this man. I pretended to be fascinated by the pattern on my napkin, while feeling the weight of his gaze settle on me like a physical touch. "Who is she?" I heard him ask, voice low, but carrying in the suddenly hushed restaurant. I didn't catch the response, but I felt the atmosphere shift again as he continued toward a private area at the back of the restaurant. Only then did I release the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "You've caught his attention," my server murmured, as he returned with my water, his professionally neutral expression betrayed by the tension around his eyes. That was Mr. Castillo. The name should have meant nothing to me, but a shiver traced my spine nonetheless. There was something in the way the server said it, a reverence tinged with fear, that told me this wasn't just any wealthy businessman. My salmon arrived, beautifully plated but now tasting like ashes in my mouth, as I felt occasional glances from the private section burning into my back. I ate mechanically, regretting my decision to come here, wishing I'd chosen an anonymous diner instead. This birthday treat had transformed into an ordeal to be endured. I was nearly finished when the server returned, this time with a glass of dark red wine I hadn't ordered. "Compliments of Mr. Castillo," he said, placing it beside my plate. I didn't order this," I stammered, panic rising in my throat, "and I can't accept. It would be impolite to refuse." The server interrupted softly, his expression conveying what his words didn't. This wasn't a suggestion. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the glass, taking the smallest sip possible. The wine was rich and complex, probably costing more than my weekly grocery budget. I set it down quickly, determined to finish my meal and leave as soon as possible. When I asked for the check, the server shook his head. "Your meal has been taken care of, Ms. Harper," I supplied automatically before I could stop myself. "Emma Harper. But I can't accept. Mr. Castillo insists." Again, that tone that brooked no argument. I nodded, gathering my worn purse and cardigan. As I stood, I made the mistake of glancing toward the private section. Through a gap in the privacy screens, those whiskey-colored eyes caught mine. "Mr. Castillo raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement, his expression unreadable but intense. Something in that gaze made me feel simultaneously seen and hunted. I hurried out, the cool night air a relief after the stifling atmosphere inside. My ancient Honda sat like an eyesore among the gleaming luxury vehicles in the parking lot. As I fumbled for my keys, a sleek black car pulled up beside me, the window lowering to reveal one of Mr. Castillo's security men. "Ms. Harper," he said, my name in his mouth sending another chill through me. "Mr. Castillo would like to ensure you get home safely. Allow us to escort you." "That's really not necessary," I said, backing away slightly. "I only live 15 minutes from here." It wasn't a request. His tone remained polite, but the underlying steel was unmistakable. Before I could protest further, the back door opened, and there he was, Alexander Castillo, regarding me with those intense eyes that seemed to strip away my defenses. "Please, join me," he said, his voice deep and smooth like the wine he'd sent to my table. "I insist." In that moment, I made what would prove to be the most consequential mistake of my life. Instead of running, instead of screaming, instead of causing the scene that might have saved me from what was to come, I slipped into the back seat beside him. The door closed with a soft click that sounded to my ears like a cage snapping shut. "Emma Harper," he said, my name on his lips somehow sounding like both a caress and a claim. "Tell me, what brings a woman like you to my restaurant? Alone? On a Tuesday night?" "It's my birthday," I admitted, the words escaping before I could consider them. Something flickered in his eyes, interest, perhaps, or calculation. A birthday should never be celebrated alone. He studied me, gaze lingering on my hands, my face, my simple clothes. "You have a child." It wasn't a question. I glanced down at my purse, where a small unicorn keychain, Lily's gift to me this morning, hung from the zipper. "A daughter," I confirmed reluctantly. "She's 4. And her father?" The bluntness of the question startled me. "Not in the picture." He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "Address?" he asked, and when I hesitated, added, "So we can take you home, Emma." The way he said my name, so familiar, so possessive already, should have warned me. But exhaustion and the lingering effects of the wine clouded my judgment. I gave him my address, watching as he relayed it to the driver with a quiet command. As the car glided through the night streets, I realized with growing unease that Alexander Castillo hadn't stopped looking at me, his gaze a physical weight I couldn't shake. In the confined space of the car, I caught his scent, expensive cologne with undertones of something darker, something dangerous. "Why did you pay for my meal?" I finally asked, needing to break the charged silence. A smile curved his lips, not quite reaching those predatory eyes. "Let's call it a birthday gift." "From a complete stranger?" I countered, finding a spark of courage. "We're hardly strangers now, Emma," he replied. "I know your name, where you live, that you have a daughter, and that you were dining alone on your birthday in a restaurant where you clearly felt out of place." He leaned slightly closer. "I find I want to know more." The car stopped outside my apartment building, a modest complex that looked even shabbier through the tinted windows of his luxury vehicle. "Thank you for the ride," I said stiffly, reaching for the door handle. His hand caught mine, warm and strong, the touch sending an involuntary shiver through me. "One more thing," he said, producing a business card seemingly from nowhere. "When you need anything, anything at all, call this number." I took the card automatically, the heavy cardstock embossed with just a phone number, no name. "Why would I need anything from you?" I asked, finding another flicker of defiance. Alexander Castillo smiled again, this time showing a flash of perfect white teeth that reminded me of a predator's warning. "Because, Emma Harper," he said, releasing my hand, but somehow making me feel more captured than before. "Everyone eventually needs something from someone like me." I escaped the car, clutching my purse and the business card, feeling his eyes on my back until I disappeared into my building. Only when I was safely inside my apartment, door locked and chained, did I allow myself to breathe. On my refrigerator, Lily's crayon drawing smiled at me, a stick figure of her and me, holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. Normal, safe, my world. I looked down at the business card in my trembling hand, suddenly certain that my world had just tilted irrevocably on its axis. What I couldn't have known then, as I slipped the card into my wallet instead of tearing it to pieces as I should have, was that Alexander Castillo had already decided I belonged to him, and men like Alexander Castillo always took what they wanted. 3 days passed in blissful normality. I worked my shifts at St. Mary's Hospital, picked Lily up from preschool, and tried to convince myself that the encounter with Alexander Castillo had been nothing more than an unsettling birthday adventure, a story I might someday tell with a nervous laugh. The business card remained in my wallet, untouched but not forgotten. Sometimes during quiet moments, I found myself running my finger over the embossed number, wondering what would happen if I called. I never did. On Thursday afternoon, I was helping Lily build a castle out of mismatched blocks when someone knocked on our apartment door. Unexpected visitors were rare in our quiet life. "Stay here, sweetie," I told Lily, my heart inexplicably racing as I approached the door. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery man holding an elaborate arrangement of white roses. Frowning, I opened the door a crack, security chain still in place. "Emma Harper?" he asked, consulting his clipboard. "Yes?" "Delivery for you." I unlatched the chain and accepted the flowers. At least 24 pristine roses nestled among fragrant greenery, wrapped in heavy cream paper tied with a silk ribbon. The delivery man nodded and left without waiting for a tip, which was fortunate since I had none to give. "Pretty," Lily exclaimed, abandoning her blocks to examine the flowers. "Is it your birthday again?" "No, sweetie." I searched for a card among the blooms and found a small envelope. Inside was a heavy cardstock note with only 3 words in elegant script. "Happy belated birthday." No signature. But I didn't need one. The knot in my stomach tightened as I realized Alexander Castillo knew where I lived, not just my building, but my specific apartment. The roses suddenly seemed less like a gift and more like a message. "I can reach you whenever I want." That night, after tucking Lily into bed, I searched Alexander Castillo's name online. What I found sent chills crawling up my spine. The official articles described him as a successful entrepreneur, with interests in real estate, import and export businesses, and several high-end restaurants, including the Obsidian. But between the lines of respectability ran darker threads, investigations that mysteriously ended, competitors who disappeared, and whispered associations with organized crime. Alexander Castillo wasn't just wealthy, he was dangerous. And for some unfathomable reason, he had fixed his attention on me. The next morning, I dropped Lily at preschool and hurried to work, hyper-aware of my surroundings. Every black car made my pulse quicken. Every suited man became a potential threat. I was jumping at shadows, but the shadows seemed to be watching back. "You okay, Emma?" asked Diane, the head nurse, as I fumbled a stack of patient charts. "You seem distracted today." "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. "Lily had nightmares last night." Diane nodded sympathetically. "Single parenting is tough." "Hey, if you need an extra shift next week, we're short-staffed on Tuesday." "I'll take it," I said quickly, mentally calculating how the additional hours would help with next month's rent. Since Lily's father had vanished 2 years ago, taking my savings and leaving nothing but debt, I'd been perpetually treading financial water. As my shift ended, I headed to the staff locker room to change out of my scrubs. The room was empty except for me, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as I pulled on my jeans and sweater. When I closed my locker, I nearly screamed at the reflection in the small mirror, a man standing behind me, one of Alexander Castillo's security guards, the same one who had spoken to me outside the restaurant. "Jesus," I gasped, spinning around. "How did you get in here? This is staff only." His expression remained impassive. "Mr. Castillo would like to see you." Fear and indignation warred within me. "I'm picking up my daughter in 20 minutes. Arrangements have been made. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, will watch her until later this evening." Ice flooded my veins. "You spoke to Mrs. Chen? How do you even know?" "Mr. Castillo is a thorough man," he interrupted, as if this explained everything. "The car is waiting." I thought about screaming, about running to security, about calling the police, but something in the man's calm certainty told me none of those options would end well. Alexander Castillo had tentacles everywhere, it seemed. "What does he want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "That's between you and him." He gestured toward the door. "Shall we?" The same sleek black car waited in the staff parking lot. This time, Alexander wasn't inside. Instead, I rode alone in the back, while the security guard sat with the driver, the privacy glass raised between us. We drove for nearly 30 minutes, leaving the familiar parts of the city behind until we reached an exclusive waterfront neighborhood, where mansions stood behind high gates and private security. The car pulled up to an imposing estate protected by a stone wall and wrought iron gates that opened silently at our approach. The house itself was a modernist statement of glass, stone, and clean lines, perched on a cliff overlooking the water. Beautiful, but fortress-like. I was escorted inside through a cavernous foyer with marble floors and art pieces that belonged in museums. The security guard led me through the house to a terrace overlooking the ocean, where Alexander Castillo sat reviewing documents at a glass table. He looked up as I approached, those whiskey-colored eyes warming with something that made my stomach tighten. He wore casual clothes today, if a shirt that probably cost more than my monthly rent could be considered casual. The sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms lightly dusted with dark hair. "Emma," he said, standing and dismissing the security guard with a slight nod. "Thank you for coming." Did I have a choice? The words slipped out before I could stop them. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. There are always choices, but I'm glad you made this one. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please, sit. Would you like something to drink? Water? Wine? Coffee? Water, I said, reluctantly taking the offered seat. The ocean view was breathtaking, the late afternoon sun casting golden light across the waves. He poured water from a crystal pitcher himself, rather than summoning staff, a small gesture that nonetheless felt significant. His movements were precise and controlled, like everything about him. You're upset about the flowers, he said, setting the water glass before me. Not a question. I'm upset that you know where I live, that you contacted my neighbor, that you're interfering with my life, I replied, finding courage in anger. I don't know what you want from me. Alexander studied me with those penetrating eyes. What I want is simple, Emma. Your company. My company, I repeated flatly. You could have anyone. Models, actresses, socialites. Why are you fixated on a single mother who can barely afford to eat at your restaurant? He leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving mine, because when I saw you sitting alone in that restaurant, so clearly out of place, yet holding yourself with such quiet dignity, I saw something rare, authenticity. Do you know how unusual that is in my world? I took a sip of water, using the moment to collect my thoughts. So I'm a novelty, a curiosity. You're a mystery I find myself wanting to solve. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. Tell me about yourself, Emma Harper. There's nothing to tell. I work at St. Mary's Hospital. I raise my daughter. I try to make ends meet. And Lily's father? The question hit a tender spot. Gone. He cleaned out our savings and disappeared when Lily was 2. I later found out he had gambling debts. Something darkened in Alexander's eyes. His name? Why does it matter? I hesitated, then relented. Marcus Denton. Alexander nodded almost imperceptibly, as if filing the information away. The casual way he asked, the intensity of his interest, it unsettled me deeply. What do you actually want from me, Mr. Castillo? Alexander, he corrected gently. And I told you, your company, dinner perhaps, conversation. Nothing more complicated than that. Nothing was ever that simple, especially with men like him. And if I say no? He sat back, regarding me calmly. Then Raymond will drive you home, and you'll never hear from me again. The offer of freedom should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a test, one whose rules I didn't understand. Just like that. I don't force my company on unwilling women, Emma. His tone carried a hint of offense. Yet here I was, brought to his home without my explicit consent. The contradiction hung in the air between us. One dinner, I found myself saying, though a wiser part of me screamed to take the escape offered. And then you'll leave me alone if that's what I want? A smile spread across his face. Genuine this time, transforming his severe features into something devastatingly handsome. One dinner. You have my word. As if on cue, a staff member appeared from inside the house. Dinner is ready to be served when you are, sir. I blinked in surprise. You already had dinner planned? You were that confident? Alexander stood, offering his hand to help me up. I'm always prepared for multiple outcomes. Shall we? I ignored his hand, rising on my own, unwilling to touch him just yet. He accepted this small rebellion with grace, leading me to an intimate dining room with windows overlooking the darkening ocean and a table set for 2 with fine china and crystal. The meal was exquisite, course after course of perfectly prepared dishes paired with wines I couldn't begin to identify. Throughout dinner, Alexander asked questions about my life, listening with unexpected interest to my mundane stories about hospital work and raising Lily. He revealed little about himself in return, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. You know everything about me, and I know almost nothing about you, I observed as dessert was served. A delicate chocolate creation that probably contained more calories than I usually consumed in a day. What would you like to know? He asked, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. What do you really do? I ventured boldly. Beyond the restaurants and businesses mentioned in articles, his eyes gleamed with something like approval. I solve problems for people who can't solve them through conventional channels. I provide protection, arbitration, and certain specialized services. You're in the Mafia, I translated bluntly. He didn't flinch. That's an outdated term. I prefer to think of myself as operating within the gray areas of society, areas that exist whether people acknowledge them or not. Is that supposed to make me feel better about sitting across from you? No, he said simply. It's meant to answer your question honestly. I respect you too much to lie. The statement caught me off guard. Respect wasn't what I expected from a man like him. After dinner, Alexander led me to a sitting room where a fire crackled in a stone hearth despite the mild evening. It's getting late, he said. Raymond can drive you home now, or... He paused, studying my face. You seem exhausted, Emma. I have several guest rooms. You're welcome to stay the night and return home refreshed in the morning. Alarm bells rang in my head. My daughter is being well cared for by Mrs. Chen, who I've arranged to compensate generously for her time. He finished smoothly. I've also taken the liberty of having some clothes delivered for you, should you choose to stay. The casual display of power, arranging my life, my child care, even my clothing, should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a confusing mixture of indignation and relief. For years, I'd carried every burden alone, made every decision, solved every problem. Having someone simply handle things was both intrusive and oddly freeing. Why are you doing all this? I asked, genuinely bewildered. What could you possibly want from me that's worth this effort? Alexander moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Perhaps I'm tired of people who want things from me. My money, my power, my protection. Perhaps I find it refreshing to be with someone who wants nothing. I do want something, I corrected him. I want you to leave me and my daughter alone after tonight. A shadow crossed his face. Is that truly what you want, Emma? The question hung in the air between us, heavier than it should have been. In the firelight, his eyes seemed to glow with an intensity that made my breath catch. I want to go home, I said finally, my voice barely audible. Something that might have been disappointment flickered across his features, before his expression smoothed into polite acceptance. Of course. Raymond will take you. As we walked toward the foyer, Alexander's phone rang. He checked the screen, his jaw tightening. Excuse me for a moment. This is important. He stepped away to take the call, his voice too low for me to hear. When he returned, his expression had hardened, all traces of the charming dinner companion gone. There's been a development, he said, his tone clipped. It concerns your daughter's father. My blood froze in my veins. Marcus? What about him? Alexander's eyes held mine, unreadable and dark. He's back in the city, and he's looking for you. That's impossible. The words came out as a whisper, my legs suddenly unsteady beneath me. Marcus disappeared 2 years ago. Alexander guided me to a nearby chair, his hand at my elbow both supportive and possessive. He returned 3 days ago. My sources inform me he's accumulated even more significant debts than before. Your sources? I stared up at him, pieces clicking into horrible place. You've been investigating me, my past, my life. He didn't deny it. I make it a point to know everything about people who interest me. A chill ran through me despite the warmth of the room. How would Marcus even know where to find us? We moved after he left. I changed my phone number, my email. Everything. Alexander's expression darkened. People like Marcus have ways of finding what they're looking for when motivated enough. And it seems he's very motivated. By what? He took everything when he left. My voice cracked on the last word, memories surfacing of those devastating days. Discovering our joint account emptied, credit cards maxed out, even Lily's small college fund gone. Alexander crouched before me, bringing his face level with mine, those intense eyes capturing my gaze. Emma, I need you to listen carefully. Men with gambling debts as severe as his don't simply want money. They're desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. Fear clawed at my throat as I thought of Lily, her innocent smile, her complete trust in me to keep her safe. What does he want from us? According to my information, he believes you have something of value. That's ridiculous. Everything of value went with him. Alexander's expression remained grave. Not everything. He's been telling his creditors about an inheritance. Confusion replaced some of my fear. Inheritance? My parents left me nothing but medical debt when they died. Your grandmother's jewelry, Alexander said quietly. The pieces you keep in the small wooden box on your closet shelf. I recoiled, genuinely frightened now by how much he knew about my private life. How could you possibly? As I said, I'm thorough. He rose and moved to pour 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. The point is, Marcus has convinced some very unpleasant people that these pieces are worth a substantial amount. They're not, I said, accepting the glass he offered, more for something to hold than any desire to drink. Just sentimental pieces, a few gold necklaces, some rings with small stones, nothing valuable. Alexander gave me a look that contained something like pity. Value is relative, Emma. To collectors of certain vintage pieces, they might be worth more than you realize. But that's irrelevant. What matters is that Marcus has promised these items as payment, and the people he owes aren't known for their patience or understanding when promises are broken. The implications hit me like a physical blow. You think he'll come after us, after Lily? I know he will. Alexander's certainty chilled me more than any speculation could have. In fact, he's already been watching your apartment building. My men noticed him yesterday. The glass nearly slipped from my fingers. Yesterday? And you didn't think to warn me? My daughter was there, alone with a babysitter while I worked a double shift. You were never in immediate danger, he said, his tone suddenly cold and authoritative. I've had people monitoring your apartment since the night we met. The revelation should have comforted me. Instead, it intensified my alarm. You've been watching us? For days? Protecting you, he corrected, as if the distinction was crucial. My mind raced through the implications. Alexander Castillo, a man who operated in the gray areas, as he put it, had been having me and my daughter watched. The same man who had somehow discovered intimate details about my life, my past, even the contents of my closet. The same man who had effectively forced me to have dinner with him tonight. And yet, the same man who was now warning me about a very real threat to my daughter's safety. I need to go home. Now. I set down the untouched drink and stood. I need to get Lily, and I stopped, realizing I had nowhere to go, no safe haven, no resources to protect us. Alexander watched the realization dawn on my face. Stay here tonight, he said, his voice gentler now. Both of you. I'll send Raymond to collect Lily and Mrs. Chen. They'll be here within the hour. In your home? With you? The idea seemed both outrageous and, in light of what he'd just told me, grimly sensible. This house has state-of-the-art security, and my most trusted men guarding it. No one enters without my explicit permission. He moved closer, not touching me, but enveloping me in his presence nonetheless. Emma, whatever you may think of me, whatever reservations you have, and they're valid, I can keep you safe, both of you. The sincerity in his voice was compelling. Or perhaps it was simply that I had no better options. Just for tonight, I conceded, hating how quickly I'd gone from defiance to dependence. And tomorrow we figure out a more permanent solution. Something flickered in his eyes, satisfaction perhaps, but it was gone too quickly to identify. Of course, I'll make the arrangements. Within the hour, Lily arrived, sleepy-eyed and confused in her pink pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Mrs. Chen had packed a small overnight bag with Lily's essentials. Mama, this house is like a castle, Lily whispered when I scooped her into my arms, her eyes wide as she took in the grand foyer. Are we on vacation? Something like that, sweetheart, I murmured, breathing in her familiar scent of baby shampoo and the faint sweetness that was uniquely hers. Just for tonight. Alexander appeared at the top of the sweeping staircase, having changed into more casual clothes, though still impossibly elegant. He descended slowly, his eyes fixed on Lily with an expression I couldn't decipher. You must be Lily, he said when he reached us, his deep voice softening as he crouched to her eye level. I'm Alexander. This is my home. Lily regarded him solemnly, still clutching her rabbit. Do you have a swimming pool? Castles always have swimming pools in my books. A genuine smile transformed Alexander's face, making him look younger, almost boyish. I do, in fact. Perhaps tomorrow your mother will let you see it. We won't be imposing that long, I interjected quickly. Alexander straightened, that unreadable expression returning. Let me show you to your rooms. I've had the staff prepare the blue suite. It has connecting bedrooms, so Lily can be close to you. The blue suite proved to be larger than our entire apartment, with a sitting area, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom that featured a shower big enough for 4 people and a tub that resembled a small pool. Everything was decorated in soothing shades of blue and cream, elegant, but somehow still welcoming. This is beautiful, I admitted, as Lily explored the rooms with delighted gasps and exclamations. It's yours for as long as you need it, Alexander said, leaning against the doorframe, watching Lily with that same curious expression. Is there anything else you require tonight? I shook my head, suddenly overwhelmed by the day's events. No, this is more than enough, he nodded, his gaze returning to me. There are clothes for both of you in the dressers. I had my assistant make some educated guesses about sizes. The thought of him selecting clothing for us, or more likely, instructing some employee to do so, made me deeply uncomfortable, but I was too exhausted to protest. Thank you. Sleep well, Emma, he said, lingering a moment longer than necessary before turning to leave. At the door, he paused. My bedroom is at the end of this hallway, should you need anything during the night. His eyes held mine meaningfully. Anything at all. After he left, I helped Lily brush her teeth and tucked her into the child-sized bed in the connecting room, which someone had thoughtfully prepared with fresh linens decorated with cartoon characters. She fell asleep almost instantly, the day's excitement having worn her out. I took a long shower, letting the hot water wash away some of my stress, before slipping into a silk nightgown I found in the dresser, exactly my size, as promised. The garment was modest enough, but the quality and feel of it against my skin made me acutely aware that it probably cost more than I made in a day. Sleep evaded me despite my exhaustion. I kept replaying Alexander's warnings about Marcus, imagining worst-case scenarios, feeling the walls of some invisible cage closing around me. After tossing for an hour, I slipped out of bed and padded to the sitting area, hoping to clear my mind. Through the windows, moonlight spilled across a landscaped garden and reflected off the dark ocean beyond. The view was breathtaking, but it only emphasized how far I was from my normal life, how quickly everything had changed. A soft knock at the outer door startled me. When I opened it, Alexander stood there, still fully dressed despite the late hour. I saw the light, he explained, nodding toward the lamp I'd switched on. May I come in? There are developments we should discuss. I glanced back toward Lily's room, confirming her door was closed, then reluctantly stepped aside. Alexander entered, his presence immediately filling the space in a way that made it hard to breathe. His eyes swept over me in the nightgown, before returning to my face with a heat that made my cheeks warm. Developments? I prompted, crossing my arms over my chest. He moved to the small bar in the corner, pouring himself a drink. Marcus made contact with his creditors this evening. He's promised delivery of the items by tomorrow night. My stomach dropped. He doesn't have them. He can't get into my apartment. No, but he's desperate enough to try. Alexander sipped his drink, watching me over the rim of the glass. Which means we need to consider your options beyond tonight. We? The word slipped out more sharply than I intended. His eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, Emma. We. Because whether you like it or not, your problems and mine have become intertwined. How exactly are my problems yours? I challenged, finding a spark of defiance despite my vulnerability, standing before him in borrowed silk in his home. Alexander set down his glass and moved closer, his movement deliberately slow, as if approaching a frightened animal. The moment I noticed you in my restaurant, the moment I decided to learn your name, to seek your company, that was the moment your safety became my concern. He stopped just short of touching me. And I protect what's mine. I'm not yours, I whispered, even as something deep inside me responded to his possessive tone. Aren't you? His voice dropped lower, intimate, in the quiet room. You're in my home, wearing clothes I provided, sleeping under my protection. Your daughter is safe because I made it so. The truth of his words stung. In less than a week, I had become dependent on him in ways I couldn't have imagined. The independent life I'd built since Marcus left suddenly seemed fragile, an illusion of security that had shattered at the first real threat. "What are my options then?" I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. "Stay here," he said immediately. "Not just tonight, but until the situation with Marcus is permanently resolved." The implication in permanently resolved sent a chill through me. And how long would that be? "As long as necessary." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with surprising gentleness. "I have a proposal, Emma, one that would solve your immediate problems and potentially offer a more lasting arrangement." I stepped back from his touch. "What kind of proposal?" "A position has recently opened in my household staff, a live-in role, overseeing certain domestic operations. The previous employee has retired after many years of service." I stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to be your housekeeper?" A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Not exactly. The role is more of a household manager, overseeing staff schedules, managing social calendars, ensuring the smooth operation of this and my other properties. It comes with a generous salary, private accommodations for you and Lily, and all living expenses covered. Lily would have access to the best schools, the best opportunities." The offer was both tempting and terrifying. "And what would you expect in return for this generosity?" His eyes darkened. "Your presence, your loyalty." He moved closer again, this time not stopping until bare inches separated us. "I find I enjoy having you near, Emma. The rest would develop naturally if you were amenable." The implication was clear. This wasn't just a job offer, it was something far more complicated and dangerous. An arrangement where the lines between employee and something else would inevitably blur. "And if I say no, then I'll still ensure your safety until the Marcus situation is resolved. I'll help you find suitable accommodations elsewhere, perhaps in another city where he can't find you. I'll make sure you and Lily are financially secure." His expression remained impassive. "I told you before, I don't force my company on unwilling women." Yet the power imbalance between us made any notion of choice seem almost laughable. He held all the cards, the resources, the information, the protection Lily and I desperately needed. "I need time," I said finally. "To think." He nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. It wasn't a rejection, and he knew it. "Of course. Take all the time you need." As he turned to leave, a sudden thought occurred to me. "Alexander," I called after him, the first time I'd used his first name voluntarily. "How did you know about my grandmother's jewelry? Really?" He paused at the door, considering me for a long moment. "When I became interested in you, I had your apartment thoroughly searched. Standard procedure when I'm considering bringing someone into my life." The casual admission of such a profound violation left me speechless. "Rest well, Emma," he said, closing the door behind him, leaving me alone with the uncomfortable knowledge that my life had already been changed beyond recognition, and that some part of me, some traitorous, previously unknown part, didn't entirely mind. I returned to bed where sleep continued to elude me. In the connecting room, Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the dangerous currents swirling around us, currents that seemed increasingly likely to sweep us into Alexander Castillo's world permanently. Morning arrived with disorienting brightness. For a moment, lying in the luxurious bed, I couldn't remember where I was. Then reality came flooding back. Alexander Castillo, Marcus's return, the proposal that had kept me awake most of the night. Lily's excited voice drifted from the connecting room. Following the sound, I found her sitting cross-legged on her bed, chatting animatedly with a woman in a crisp uniform who was arranging a breakfast tray. "Mama, look, pancakes shaped like bunnies," Lily exclaimed, pointing to the elaborately presented breakfast. The staff member straightened, offering me a polite smile. "Good morning, Ms. Harper. Mr. Castillo asked that breakfast be served in your suite. He thought Miss Lily might enjoy it." "Thank you," I managed, still trying to process the strangeness of waking up to servants and bunny-shaped pancakes. "Is Mr. Castillo around?" "He left early for business, but asked me to inform you that he'll return by noon. He also requested that you and Miss Lily remain on the property today." Her expression remained professionally neutral, but I detected a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Clearly, our presence was unusual enough to spark interest among the staff. After she left, Lily and I shared the extravagant breakfast. I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, smiling at her excitement over the pancakes and fresh fruit. But my mind kept returning to Alexander's proposal and the looming threat of Marcus. "Can we see the swimming pool today?" Lily asked, her face sticky with syrup. "Maybe," I hedged, helping her clean up. "First, let's explore inside, and you need a bath, little miss." After bathing Lily and dressing us both in the clothes provided, simple but expensive items that fit us perfectly, we ventured out of the suite. A security guard stationed at the end of the hallway nodded respectfully, but made no move to stop us as we wandered through the sprawling house. The place was a labyrinth of elegant rooms, each more impressive than the last. Lily was enchanted, especially by the library with its floor-to-ceiling shelves and rolling ladder. We spent an hour there, reading from a collection of children's books that seemed suspiciously new, as if they'd been purchased specifically for her visit. Around 11, we discovered the indoor pool, a magnificent space with a glass ceiling that bathed the water in natural light. Lily pressed her face against the glass doors, her expression pleading. "Please, Mama, just for a little while?" I hesitated, but the hopeful look in her eyes won me over. "All right, but we don't have swimsuits." "Actually, you do." The voice came from behind us, making me jump. Alexander stood there, earlier than expected, watching us with that now familiar intensity. He'd changed from the business attire he must have worn for his morning meetings into more casual clothes, though still impeccably tailored. "I had swimwear added to your wardrobes this morning," he continued, stepping closer. "Good morning, Lily." My daughter, usually shy around strangers, beamed at him. "Hi, Mr. Alexander. Can I really swim in your pool?" "Of course." He crouched to her level, his expression softening in a way I'd only seen when he addressed her. "It's heated, too. Very comfortable." "Thank you." Lily bounced on her toes, then looked up at me. "Can we, Mama, please?" I felt trapped between my daughter's excitement and my discomfort, with accepting yet another offering from this man. "I suppose for a little while." "Excellent," Alexander said, rising. "The changing rooms are through there. Everything you need should be inside." He turned to me, his voice dropping slightly. "Perhaps afterward we could continue our conversation from last night while Lily rests." The reminder of his proposal sent a flutter of anxiety through me, but I nodded. "We should talk, yes." While Lily splashed happily in the shallow end of the pool, I sat at the edge with my feet in the water, watching Alexander swim powerful laps. His body was lean but muscled, marked with several scars that hinted at a violent past. When he finally pulled himself out of the water and sat beside me, droplets running down his chest, I found myself looking away, uncomfortable with my own awareness of him. "She's a wonderful child," he observed, watching Lily play with the floating toys that had magically appeared poolside. "Bright, spirited. She's everything to me," I said simply. Alexander was quiet for a moment. "I never had siblings. My mother died when I was young, and my father—" He trailed off, his expression hardening. My father was not a family man. It was the first truly personal detail he'd shared. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, the casual gesture at odds with the tension in his shoulders. It shaped me, made me value certain things. His eyes returned to Lily. Family loyalty, protection. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. "We need to talk, now." Alarmed by his sudden shift in tone, I called Lily out of the pool. A female staff member appeared as if summoned, offering to help Lily change and have some lunch while the adults talked. Once Lily was settled with lunch and cartoons in our suite, Alexander led me to his office, a sleek space dominated by a desk facing floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. He didn't sit, but paced behind the desk, his earlier relaxed demeanor completely gone. "Marcus has escalated the situation," he said without preamble. "He attempted to break into your apartment early this morning. When he couldn't get in, he vandalized the door and threatened your neighbor who came to investigate the noise." Horror washed through me. "Is Mrs. Patel all right?" Shaken but unharmed, my people intervened before anything serious happened. He stopped pacing, fixing me with an intense look. "Emma, this changes the timeline. He's growing desperate, which makes him unpredictable, I sank into a chair, trying to process this new development. What does that mean for us? For Lily? Alexander moved around the desk, kneeling before me and taking my hands in his. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that I didn't pull away. It means you need to make a decision, he said, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. Stay here, where I can guarantee your safety, or let me arrange for you to disappear. New identities, new location, completely off the grid. The options spun in my head. Disappearing meant leaving everything behind. My job, the few friends I had, the life I'd built for Lily. Staying meant binding our future to Alexander Castillo, a man who operated in shadows, who had invaded my privacy, who clearly saw me as something to possess. If we stay, I said slowly, what exactly would that mean, in practical terms? His thumbs traced circles on my palms, the touch distracting. You would accept the position we discussed. Lily would have a home here, with access to private tutors, the best education. You would have financial security, protection. His eyes held mine. And you would have me. As what? I whispered, needing clarity even as I feared the answer. Initially, as your employer. Over time, perhaps as something more, if that's what you wanted. He released one of my hands to brush his fingers against my cheek. I'm attracted to you, Emma, more than attracted. But I meant what I said. I won't force anything. The sincerity in his voice was compelling, as was the warmth of his touch. For a woman who had been alone for so long, shouldering every burden by myself, the promise of protection, of having someone powerful on my side, was almost irresistible. And Marcus? I asked, my voice barely audible. Alexander's expression hardened. Leave Marcus to me. The implication hung heavy in the air. I should have been horrified, should have run as far from this man as possible. Instead, I found myself nodding slowly. We'll stay, I said, the words feeling momentous as they left my mouth. At least until the situation with Marcus is resolved. After that, we'll see. Satisfaction gleamed in Alexander's eyes. He raised my hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent an unexpected shiver through me. A wise decision. He rose, returning to business mode so quickly I felt dizzy from the transition. I'll have your things brought from the apartment today. Is there anything specific Lily needs that might not be obvious? I listed a few of Lily's favorite toys and books, still trying to process the choice I'd just made. Had I sold my soul for security? Or was I simply making the best decision for my daughter in an impossible situation? There's one more thing, Alexander said, watching me closely. Marcus contacted your phone several times this morning. Threatening messages. My blood ran cold. My phone is in my purse in the bedroom. I haven't checked it. I had my security team monitor communications to your devices since the situation developed, he explained, unapologetic about yet another invasion of privacy. The content of the messages concerns me. He's becoming increasingly unhinged. Before I could respond, a knock at the door interrupted us. One of Alexander's security men entered, his expression grave. Sir, we have a situation. Marcus Denton has been spotted near the property perimeter. Alexander's entire demeanor changed in an instant, his face hardening into something dangerous and cold. He issued rapid commands about security protocols and surveillance, then turned to me. Stay here, he ordered, no trace of the gentle man who had kissed my hands moments before. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. Fear gripped me. Lily is safe, he assured me, already moving toward the door. The house is on lockdown. No one gets in without going through me first. As the door closed behind him, I did as instructed, turning the heavy lock. Through the windows, I saw security personnel moving across the grounds with purpose, communicating via earpieces. The beautiful home had transformed into a fortress. I sank back into the chair, the magnitude of my decision crashing over me like a wave. In the space of 5 days, I had gone from independent single mother to being under the protection and power of a man who operated outside the law, a man who clearly wanted more from me than just my presence in his home. And the most frightening realization of all? Part of me wanted to give it to him. Time crawled by in Alexander's office. Through the windows, I watched security personnel patrolling the grounds, their movements precise and coordinated. Twice I tried calling the suite where Lily was staying, but no one answered, intensifying my anxiety. After 30 agonizing minutes, the office door unlocked. Alexander entered, his expression grim but controlled. Behind him stood 2 of his security men, flanking a third person whose appearance made my blood freeze, Marcus. Thinner than I remembered, his once handsome face haggard and marked by a fresh bruise blooming along his jaw. His hands were secured behind his back, and his eyes, when they found mine, contained equal parts hatred and fear. "Emma!" he spat, struggling against the men holding him. "Still hiding behind others, I see." Alexander's hand shot out, gripping Marcus's throat with such sudden violence that I gasped. "You speak to her with respect," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "or you don't speak at all." Marcus's face reddened as he struggled for breath until Alexander released him with a look of disgust. "Leave us," Alexander commanded his men. "Wait outside." They exited without question, leaving the 3 of us in a triangle of tension so thick it seemed to distort the air. "Sit," Alexander told Marcus, pushing him roughly into a chair before turning to me. His expression softened fractionally. "Are you all right?" I nodded, unable to form words, my eyes fixed on the man who had once promised to love me forever, who had fathered my child, who had abandoned us both and stolen everything we had. "Your ex-husband has quite a story," Alexander continued, leaning against his desk, his posture relaxed but his eyes vigilant. "He seems to believe you're hiding assets that rightfully belong to him." Marcus glared at me. The jewelry was my grandmother's, not hers. She took it when I left. "Liar," I whispered, finding my voice at last. "Those pieces were from my grandmother. You knew that. You were with me when my mother gave them to me after she died. Always the victim," Marcus sneered. "Tell that to the men who are going to kill me if I don't deliver what I promised." Alexander observed our exchange with cold interest. "Mr. Denton here owes considerable sums to some very unpleasant people even I prefer not to do business with." He moved to stand behind Marcus's chair, his hands resting on the back in a gesture that appeared casual but contained unmistakable menace. "He's managed to convince them that your family heirlooms are worth enough to clear his debts." "They're not," I said, meeting Marcus's desperate gaze. "They're just old pieces with sentimental value." "You're lying," Marcus hissed. "Your mother told me they were valuable, antiques, worth at least 50,000. I shook my head, genuine confusion joining my fear. "That's impossible. My mother barely had enough money for rent most months. If those pieces were valuable, she would have sold them during one of her many financial crises." Something in my tone must have convinced him because Marcus's expression crumbled from anger to despair. "No," he whispered. "No. They have to be worth something. They have to be." "How much do you owe?" Alexander asked, his tone conversational but his eyes hard. Marcus swallowed. 70,000, plus interest." "And who holds this debt?" "The Vega brothers." Alexander's expression darkened further. "Unwise associations, Mr. Denton." The name meant nothing to me, but clearly, it held significance for Alexander. He circled the desk and pressed a button on his phone. "Bring in the box." Moments later, one of his men entered carrying a familiar wooden container, my grandmother's jewelry box. He placed it on the desk and exited without a word. Alexander opened it, revealing the modest collection inside. A gold locket, 2 rings with small stones, a pearl necklace, and a few other pieces. Nothing that looked particularly valuable to my untrained eye. "Is this what you were looking for?" he asked Marcus. Marcus stared at the open box, his expression desperate. "Yes. That's it." Alexander picked up one of the rings, examining it in the light. "Costume jewelry," he said dismissively. "The stones are glass. The metal is gold-plated at best." He set it down and selected another piece. "This one might fetch a few $100s from a vintage dealer, nothing more." Marcus made a sound like a wounded animal. "That can't be right. It can't be. I had an appraiser examine these pieces yesterday," Alexander continued mercilessly. "Total value, approximately $2,000, hardly enough to cover what you owe the Vegas." The revelation hit me with unexpected force. Alexander had not only located my jewelry, but had it professionally appraised, all without my knowledge. The violation should have outraged me. But in that moment, all I felt was a strange relief that the items truly were as worthless as I'd always believed. "You're a dead man," Marcus whispered, all color draining from his face. "And if they don't get their money, they'll come after Emma and Lily too." At the mention of my daughter's name, something in Alexander changed. The controlled businessman vanished, replaced by something dangerous and primal. He moved with startling speed, gripping Marcus's chin and forcing his head up. "Let me be perfectly clear," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet somehow filling the room. "Emma and Lily are under my protection now. My name, my roof, my resources. If anyone threatens them, they answer to me." The implications of his words settled over us all. My status in Alexander's household was being publicly declared, not just to Marcus, but to whoever might come looking for him. "The Vegas work for me," Alexander continued, releasing Marcus with a small shove. "Their operation falls under my territory, a fact you would have known if you'd done even minimal research before borrowing from them." Marcus's expression morphed from terror to confusion. "They work for you?" "Indirectly, but yes." Alexander straightened his cuffs, a casual gesture at odds with the tension in the room. "Which means your debt is now mine to resolve." Hope flickered across Marcus's face. "You'll pay it?" Alexander's laugh was short and without humor. "No. But I'm offering you a choice, Mr. Denton. Option 1. I call the Vegas, explain that you attempted to defraud them with worthless collateral, and let them handle you as they see fit." He paused, letting the implication sink in. "Option 2. You disappear. New identity, new location. Far from here. You never contact Emma or Lily again. You forget they exist." "And my debt?" Marcus asked, visibly trembling now. "Considered paid, with interest." Alexander's eyes were cold, in exchange for you vanishing permanently from their lives. I watched this negotiation for my future, for Lily's future, unfold with a surreal sense of detachment. The man I had once loved, who had fathered my child, was being offered a chance to walk away from us forever, and some part of me knew that Alexander's offer wasn't generosity, it was possession. He was removing a competitor, clearing his path to us. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" Marcus asked, his earlier bravado completely gone. "You don't," Alexander replied simply, "but considering your alternatives, I suggest you take the risk." He glanced at his watch. "You have 30 seconds to decide." Marcus looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since entering the room. "Emma, is this what you want? To stay with him? Do you know what he is?" The question cut through my numbness. Did I know what Alexander was? A criminal, certainly. Dangerous, undoubtedly. A man who had invaded my privacy, manipulated circumstances to bring me into his orbit, and was now effectively purchasing my ex-husband's permanent absence. But also, a man who had protected my daughter when no one else could. Who had offered us security after years of struggling alone. Who looked at me with a hunger that made me feel simultaneously valued and vulnerable. "I know enough," I said finally. "Just take the deal, Marcus. It's better than you deserve." Something like regret flashed across his face. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For everything. For leaving. Tell Lily." "Lily believes her father is dead," I interrupted coldly. "And that's how it's going to stay." Marcus flinched as if struck, but nodded slowly. "I'll take option 2. He told Alexander. "Wise choice." Alexander pressed a button on his desk phone. "Raymond will handle the arrangements. You'll leave tonight." Within minutes, Marcus was escorted out, a broken man being led to an uncertain future of his own making. As the door closed behind him, the office fell silent, except for the distant sound of waves against the cliffs below. Alexander moved to a cabinet, poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, and brought one to me. "Drink," he suggested. "It helps." I accepted the glass, taking a small sip that burned all the way down. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Now?" He sat on the edge of the desk, studying me with those intense eyes. "Now you begin your new life here. With me and Marcus? We'll be on a flight to South America tonight. New name, new documentation, enough startup money to establish himself somewhere remote. He'll be warned that any attempt to contact you or return to the country will void our arrangement. Alexander's tone made it clear what that would mean. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt unmoored, caught in a current much stronger than myself. And us? What exactly are we to each other in this new arrangement? Alexander set down his glass and moved to kneel before me, taking my free hand in his. Whatever you want us to be, Emma. I meant what I said before. I won't force anything. You'll have your position here, your own space, your independence. But you want more, I stated, meeting his gaze directly. Yes, he admitted without hesitation. I want you. All of you. But I'm a patient man. I can wait until you're ready. The sincerity in his voice was compelling, as was the gentle way he held my hand, as if I were something precious rather than something owned. And despite everything, despite all the red flags and warnings, I felt myself leaning toward him, drawn by a force I didn't fully understand. I need time, I said finally, to adjust. For Lily to adjust. He nodded, bringing my hand to his lips in what was becoming a familiar gesture. You have it. All the time you need. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. When Alexander called permission to enter, a staff member appeared with the news that Lily was asking for me. Go to her, Alexander said, releasing my hand. We'll continue this conversation another time. As I rose to leave, he caught my wrist gently. Emma, he said, his voice low and intimate. Welcome home. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they settled over me with an unexpected weight of truth. This was home now. This mansion. This life. This dangerous, compelling man who had inserted himself into our existence with such calculated precision. And as I walked toward my daughter, toward our new reality, I realized that the cage I had feared might also be a sanctuary. Alexander Castillo was a dangerous man, but his danger was now turned outward, protecting rather than threatening us. Time would tell whether I had made a devil's bargain or found an unexpected salvation. But for now, for today, Lily was safe, Marcus was gone, and I had chosen this path with open eyes. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The single mom, the little girl, and the Mafia boss who had claimed them both as his own.